It is March of the year, 453 AD, and we find ourselves somewhere in the territory of present-day Hungary. Attila the Hun, at that time the most powerful ruler in Europe and a terrifying scourge to all the peoples living there, is celebrating a wedding. It is not his first. He already has other wives as well as numerous concubines. Monogamy is the last thing that would have interested the Hunnic warriors, famed for their ferocity and brutality. For Attila, it is nevertheless a great day. His new wife, Ildiko, is a beautiful and young woman. The king celebrates lavishly, drinks heavily, and eventually retires to his bed with his bride. In the morning, however, he is found dead, covered in blood. How the 40-year-old ruler, later given the epithet, the Scourge of God, died is still not known with certainty. According to some historians, he suffocated in his own blood after heavy drinking caused a severe nosebleed. Others believe that his young, likely Germanic wife slit his throat in revenge for the atrocities he had committed against her people. Whatever the truth may be, the feared Attila is dead. His Hunnic Empire, which he had carved out in Europe and which stretched from the Caspian Sea to the North Sea, would collapse within just a few years. Yet this changes nothing about the fact that even today, more than 1,500 years later, Attila is regarded as one of the most terrifying and at the same time, greatest warriors of all time. The Huns were nomads, who most likely originated on the Mongolian plateau and gradually moved westward. Historically, it is documented that in the second half of the 4th century, they lived on the vast steppes of Central Asia and what is now southern Russia. From around the year 375, they began to push into Europe. They gradually pushed out the peoples and tribes settled north of the Danube, a process that is now regarded as the beginning of the era known somewhat euphemistically as the migration period. In reality, it was an exceptionally bloody and dark age, marked by constant killing and the forcible expulsion of entire populations from their homes. By its end, for example, the Vandals, originally from what is now Poland, had ended up in North Africa, while the Goths, originally from Scandinavia, found themselves in southern Spain. At the center of this seething cauldron stood the Roman Empire. Of the once all-powerful imperium, only a fragment remained. Rome increasingly resembled a colossus with feet of clay. Its military dominance was a thing of the past. The surrounding tribes, whom the Romans disdainfully labeled barbarians, had learned much, and their motivation to fight was often greater than that of the Roman army, which, at the time, was largely composed of Germanic and other mercenaries. Added to this were internal conflicts, struggles for power, intrigue, and political instability. In the year 395, the Roman Empire was definitively divided into two parts: the Western Roman Empire, with its capital first in Mediolanum and later in Ravenna, and the Eastern Roman Empire, with its capital in Constantinople. It was precisely at this time that the main onslaught of the Huns began. The raiders from the east represented an almost unstoppable force. They were superb horsemen, seemingly fused with their mounts. They wielded asymmetric bows, long double-edged swords, and employed battle tactics, entirely unfamiliar to Europeans, feigned retreats, ambushes, and hidden reserves. Later, they even began to use siege towers and battering rams. The Romans had never faced anything like this before. The Eastern Roman Empire was the first to feel the power of the Huns. They attacked its frontier regions and demanded tribute in exchange for their withdrawal. the emperor in Constantinople had little choice but to pay. For a long time, the Western Roman Empire was spared direct confrontation. The Romans often used the Huns as allies against other tribes, and some Huns even served in the Roman army. The problem, however, was that the peoples driven westward by the Huns sought refuge within the empire's borders. When they were refused, they had no option but to turn against it. In the year 410, the Visigoths, under King Alaric, captured and sacked Rome itself, an event previously unthinkable. The city never fully recovered from this blow. At that time, the future Hunnic king Attila was about 4 years old. Very little is known about his childhood. What is certain is that he was the nephew of the Hunnic king Rugila. In his youth, he lived as a hostage at the court of the Western Roman Emperor Honorius, which was then a common way of securing treaties between great powers. In 435, Rugila died, and Attila and his brother Bleda assumed power. They accepted tribute from the Eastern Roman Empire, and for several years turned their attention elsewhere. They then returned and began devastating the Balkans. In 443, they stood before the gates of Constantinople, but were unable to breach its massive walls. Tensions between the brothers grew. Bleda favored negotiation and a comfortable life funded by tribute, while Attila yearned for absolute power. In 445, Bleda died according to tradition, by Attila's own hand, and Attila became the sole ruler. The peak of his power came with the campaign into Gaul and the famous Battle of the Catalaunian Plains in 451. Although he was not defeated, his reputation as an invincible ruler was shaken. 2 years later, Attila died on his wedding night. Thus ended the life of a man who for a brief time reshaped the history of Europe and whose name still inspires both respect and terror today.